Well, today is January 12th, 2016, and we are interviewing Maurice Elmore. Maurice was born on 2/11 of 30 and is 85 years old. And would you please, Maurice, for the recording, state what branch of service that you served in and maybe the time frame?
Yes, I was in the Army, and I was inducted in January the 9th, 1952, and I was discharged December the 3rd, I believe, in 1953.
Okay. And that was during the Korean War?
During the Korean War.
Okay. Well, to start off, could you please tell us just a little bit about where you were born and maybe a little about your family?
I was born in Logan County, Illinois, just north of New Holland, a small farming community, and I was the fourth person in our family, a second child. I had an older sister, and then I had a younger sister.
Okay. And what about your parents? What were their occupations?
They was farmers. I was born on a farm.
Okay.
And we farmed right north of New Holland, just a half a mile north of town there.
Okay. And did you have any other family members that joined the service?
No, but my oldest sister worked on the Manhattan Project.
Which was?
About the atom bomb.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Very interesting.
She was started in the office there in New York, and then she was later on transferred to the office, the thing out in Pasco, Washington.
Okay. What was your occupation before you entered the service?
I worked as a carpenter on the railroad.
Okay.
And in the community, I worked spare time as a carpenter too.
All right. How did your family and friends feel about you going into the service?
Well, they just thought it was, wasn't much thought about it. It was just, it had to be done, and so I went ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Getting back to my work, I was later, after I was out of the service, I worked as a general contractor.
Okay.
I was in business for myself.
Okay, good. So did you enlisted?
No, I was
You were drafted?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And how did you feel about being drafted? I think probably you just answered that, but.
Yeah, I don't know. I always think serving your country is an honor, really. It's an honor to be able to serve your country, and we just never talked about it too much. It just did it, and I'm glad that I was able to serve my country and come back home. But it does teach you a little bit how lucky we are, after you see some other parts of the world, how lucky we are to be Americans. So there's always some good comes out of every bad, as a rule. So, and not being in the service was bad, but the war is bad.
Right. So the first few days you were drafted, and where did you go? Where did you begin your training?
Fort Sheridan in Chicago, Illinois.
Okay. And you were in the branch of service,
In the Army.
The Army, okay.
Yeah.
And what were those first days like?
Well, it was cold, just like today. Yeah, it was. Well, I had been in the National Guard, the Illinois National Guard, for 2.5 years, so I had an inkling what was going to happen, or what was going to be going on, but you never get used to it. So I wasn't at all surprised at anything that happened, but it was cold, and you get a lot of your shots then, and in the wintertime, your arm gets sore from those shots, and you can't hardly put them big old coats on, and it was a hassle.
Oh.
It was a hassle, but it's everybody lives through it, so it's no big deal.
So had you done basic training then before you went in the Guard?
Well, the Guard didn't have a basic training per se, it's like the
Uh-huh.
Army did.
Okay, all right. So, so you were in Chicago, and that was the beginning of everything. How long were you there, and where did you go next?
Just a few days in Chicago, but then we went to Fort Riley, Kansas, and that's where I took my basic training.
Okay.
We went by rail, by train.
Mm-hmm.
And the train went right through Lincoln, Illinois, which is pretty close to my
Mhm.
hometown. So, and I seen some people there that I happened to know when the train went through there, but it was just coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
But the train went right into Fort Riley.
So when you arrived at Fort Riley, you're disembarking from the train. What were your first thoughts there?
Well, they kept you pretty busy. You didn't have time to reminisce about stuff. You just got in line and followed everybody else. But like I said, I had been in the National Guard, and I knew there was a lot of lines, but it's basic training, and it was pretty tough.
Yeah.
They try to teach you a lot of things in a short time.
Yes. How were the instructors?
Well, it was like Army, they knew what they was doing, and they wanted you to learn from them, and they'd get upset if you didn't.
Mm-hmm.
But they were helpful too, very helpful.
That's good. So, can you tell us like maybe one story or something that happened during basic training that was very memorable for you?
Yes, I can. It was in the winter months, and we was out on bivouac, and it come about an 8-inch snow, and we had an awful time getting out of our pup tents the next morning, and we were supposed to go on a forced march for 10 miles that day, but with all the snow and stuff, the orders got sidetracked, and we went later because it was just impossible to walk in that much snow.
Yeah.
But it was quite an experience.
Any other accounts that you think of?
Well, there was one bad situation there where a young man in our platoon was on duty cleaning up. We was learning how to throw hand grenades, and one of the hand grenades got stuck in the carton or something, and it went off when he burned it up, and it injured him severely, very severely. It didn't kill him, but he was severely wounded, and he was probably affected him the rest of his life.
After basic training, what did you receive? Advanced training of any kind?
Yes, I did.
And what was that?
To run a radio. I learned international code, and we was instructed on how to take on the radio at that time. Then I was later on I was assigned to artillery, and that it came in hand in hand.
Okay. So when the training was over then, where did you have a bit of leave first, or did you go straight to an assignment?
No, I had I forget how many days we had. I think it was 14 days, I think, furlough. And I knew when I left Fort Riley that I was going. They called it FECOM then. That's Far East Command.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew that we was going to go towards Korea eventually. But my orders was I reported to Japan first, and I was assigned to the 24th Division, and then later on I was in an artillery.
Right. And so, how long were you in Japan?
About 7 months, I think.
And did you just do training or acclimation type things?
We did a lot of training because they was getting us ready to go to Korea.
Okay.
The 24th Division had been in Korea but they took them out to restock the men and get the division back in working order again.
Okay, so how was it then when you heard that you were actually going to Korea? How did that happen?
Well, we knew we was going because everybody knew. We loaded up all our equipment and went to Yokohama, Japan, and then we all got on naval ships and we went into Busan, Korea.
Okay.
And then we motored up to the front to the action.
Okay, so like to someone who doesn't know what it would be like how did you set up, and did you set up a camp, or I'm sure you had a base of some kind area. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we was building an old schoolhouse, and we set up our radio command in that, and we didn't have tents set up or anything, but we just operated out of that old schoolhouse. It wasn't in very good shape, but that's where we set up.
Okay. Let's see. So how was the physical regimen of being there, and the food, that type of thing?
Well, it was Army rations,
Sure.
and most of the time it was pretty decent. You didn't really think about that too much. I mean, if it was terrible, you thought it was terrible, but anyway, that was a small issue, really, the food. The main thing was getting home safe and sound. That was the main thing, and doing our job. And yeah, it was, we weren't right on the line, but we was artillery, so we was back off the line a little ways, and so our freedom was a little better than the people that was right on the line.
So what did you do or think, or how did you deal with the fact that you were close to the front line, and you were doing your duty to our country, and that, but knowing that, danger was could be feet away, or, a mile away or something. How did you prepare yourself and deal with that while you were there?
Well, when you're young, I was 22 at the time, and it's just, I don't know, or 23, I guess it was, but it's, well, it's always in the back of your mind, but you got your buddies is there, and the rest of your platoon and stuff, and you just, I don't know, you try not to think about it too much. You're better off if you don't think about it too much, but it's always in the back of your mind. My worst feeling is when I left Seattle. I stayed out there as long as I could on the ship to see the shores of our country, because that's when it really struck me the first time. Gosh, I hope I'm lucky enough to get back, and I suppose everybody else said the same thing. But I remember that. I remember when we left Pier 91, I think it was, in Seattle, Washington. It was bright, sunshiny day. It was in July, and I remember I stayed out on deck and watched until I couldn't see the shoreline anymore.
And how did you feel during that time while you were watching that?
Oh, I was remorseful, I guess, but and like I say, they try to keep everybody busy, and then you just start doing what you have to do, and then you forget about it. But
and how long did it take you via ship to get to Were
10
you-
days.
10 days?
And we got pulled in Yokohama
Okay.
10 days after that.
And can you tell us a little bit about ship life
Oh
for that 10
yeah,
days?
I was pretty fortunate that for some reason or other they asked for volunteers and I stuck up my hand. I don't know why, but I did, and I got to work in the galley
Oh,
every day. And we went to work at 4 o'clock in the morning, but then we got off at 10 o'clock in the morning, and then went back for a couple hours in the afternoon. And I really lucked out. I had good duty, and they kept us fed all the time, working in the galley. So it was really interesting.
so did you cook or serve, or
Oh,
how is
well, it
that?
didn't. Just once in a while we'd serve, but most of the time we just helped prepare the meal.
How was that?
Oh, well, we had big bandsaws in there to cut that meat and stuff up. You can't believe it. I've never seen a kitchen like that in my life, you know. It was just fantastic. It had been a luxury ship, and that kitchen was huge.
Huh.
And it was huge. It was interesting, though. Of course, the people that run the ship were mariners, you know. They worked they wasn't in the Navy or anything. It wasn't a naval ship. It was a mariner ship. They had their own crews, and they were union members, I guess, of that. And they were easy to work with.
Sure. Were there any memorable events from the ship that?
No, there wasn't any memorable. You know, everything went pretty good. But the one memorable thing, I did get to see whales. A gam of whales was out in there. You had to look at them with binoculars, but you could see them. That was pretty awesome. That was pretty awesome. I remember that. That was pretty awesome.
All right, so back to Korea. You're there, and can you tell us just a little bit about? I know we're a radio operator, but can you tell us a little bit about the daily routine and that part of your duties?
Well, it's you know, we was before I forget it, our outfit, in our division, there was a battalion. There was the 162nd or the 163rd. I can't remember which, but they was supposedly fired the first shot of that conflict, and we fired the last shot of that conflict. So that's, and we might have gave the orders to fire, you know. I might have done. I mean, there was several of us that was on duty that day, and I might have been one that gave them the order, but I didn't know it was all coded, you know,
Sure.
to the message. They come down from headquarters, and we'd send it out to the batteries, and no, we'll never know. Nobody will ever know, but that was we were supposed to have fired the last volley, artillery volley of that war, and the first.
So you never really were directly involved with combat. You were always back behind the lines a bit.
Yeah, we was fortunate in that. Of course, there were some moments that you was on alert all the time, but fortunately, we never did have anything sneak up on us or anything bad happen.
So were there many casualties in your unit?
No. Well, I can't really answer that. But I don't remember of hearing any. Now there might have been, but I didn't have knowledge of it if there was, or never heard about it.
What about friendships and that you made during the time you were, the whole time you were in the Army? What do you have any lasting ones that you still stay in contact with?
Yes, I do. A gentleman in Nebraska, Hartington, Nebraska, he passed away about 3 years ago, I think, but he was a real close friend. Richard Stevens was his name, and then another close buddy, he lives, William Palamacky, he lives in Struthers, Ohio, just about 60 miles south of Lake Erie.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked back and forth on the phone and send cards and stuff to each other. Yeah, there's some lasting friendships can usually come out of something like that. You know, they're your buddies and you trust them, then you become friends.
What about while you were in, were there any others that were friendships that maybe didn't last, but you just fell apart and
No, I still there's Mr. Zumal in Chicago. I still talk to him, but he wasn't as close. He was a good friend, but the other two guys, you know, we worked together a lot, and we were closer, but there are several people that I was good friends with, and I'd know them if I seen them. And there's a couple from this Springfield area but we called them short timers. They was just in for a few months to serve out their duration, and they didn't go to Korea with us. They went home because they only had like 30 days, so some of them to be in the service, and they didn't send them to Korea with that short of duty left.
What would you do for entertainment and relaxation during the time you were in Korea?
Well, there was a lot of USO shows, especially in Korea. We had quite a few.
Who were some of the entertainers?
Oh, I can't remember them. Guy Lombardo was one, and there was just USO shows. I don't know. Some of them didn't have any big names. I didn't see Bob Hope or anybody like that, but every once in a while there'd be a troupe come through and entertain on a small scale, you know, not like the ones you see on TV, but and then we a lot of times if we had time, well, not in Korea, but when we was in training, while we had our own barracks and stuff, and we'd play cards once in a while and stuff like that. And just, you know, if we had some time, we'd ride home. Everybody ride home. And most of the guys, you know, there's always a few guys that foul balls, but we didn't have any. Didn't have any.
Do you recall any particular like humorous events or maybe unusual events that happened either during training or while you were in Korea? Just, you know, with your.
Yes, I do. One event upset me pretty bad. And after they signed a truce, we had hired some of the local people, and this one gentleman, he had a family. We'd always give him a sack of greens, you know, if there was anything left that they could use. Well, we gave it to him. Not me, but the people in the kitchen did. And I was on guard duty, and I heard a commotion, and they was beating up on that guy, stealing some of his neighbors or whoever, stealing that food that we gave him. And they beat him bad enough that he almost passed away. And I remember firing over the top of that guy's head, but I didn't want to shoot anybody for something like that. But I do remember that, and you know, that people over, you can't believe how they live. You know, there'd be kids and goats and stuff coming out of the same door. I don't know. I don't think it's like that now. But that's just some of the things that I remember. And you could not drink the water. You couldn't hardly bathe in the water. It was so full of. Buddy, he got scabies and he thought he was going to have to stay in Korea until they got cleared up, but they let him go home. You know, it's something that you don't see around here, you know, in this country. course, we have diseases and stuff too, but they lived, at that time, you know, it was pretty, it was just pretty bad, really bad.
How were the people? Were they friendly, indifferent, or how?
Pretty much indifferent, I think. They was looking out for themselves more than anything, you know. Whatever they could get, it's, I don't like to say run people down, but they would, anything that was loose, it was gone. To be right honest, it was, they looked out for themselves pretty much.
Is that, do you think that was their normal lifestyle, or just maybe a product of the circumstances?
Probably the circumstances. Probably most of it is they got out of their, you know, their way of living, and which was pretty, you know, according to their customs, most of them. But I suppose that they got different levels of life there, just like we do here, you know. But that's, to see all them animals and kids come out of the same door, kind of, you know, you'd wonder how they could live like that. But I guess they did.
How about, did you eat any of the local food, or was that just not available?
I didn't.
Yeah.
I know if, I suppose there was places off base there that you could get served, but I never in Korea. I did in Japan a few times, but not very often.
And how was it in Japan? Did you enjoy the food and what about the people there?
They live pretty cleanly, and I did have when we was on maneuvers there, I did have a radio station on Mount Fuji, and that was pretty, really pretty. It was really pretty, and there's I don't know, the Japanese were, I think they were more cordial probably, but I don't think they wanted us there either, though, you know, to be right honest. I don't think so. Of course, that's been 60-some years ago.
Sure.
And I have never went back. I had a chance to go back to Korea, and I wouldn't go. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to go back over there because I remembered all them other things that I didn't like over there. So I didn't go. But they have. The United States has built a lot of that up for them, and they said that they told me I wouldn't even recognize the place. So I said that's okay. And I didn't want to go, and I didn't go. But Japan, the people in Japan, I think, were much cleaner. They live much cleaner, you know. Took a little more pride, I think, in their stuff. And I did go through Nagasaki. That's one of the towns that got hit with the H-bomb or A-bomb, and that was pretty pitiful. There were still people out there looking for whatever they could find. I don't know what it was, and that was barren, just like the tabletops there, just completely barren. But you could see them out there scratching in the dirt, looking. I don't know what they were looking for. Anything, I guess. I'm not sure. But that was that made you think about seeing that barren ground like that.
But I know you said you didn't have tents up, so did you sleep inside of the where you had your radio command, or so you were able to sleep in there?
Yeah, we sure did.
And how was that? Was it like in
Well,
on the floor?
It was better than, but it rained a lot when we was there. See, I wasn't there in the wintertime, and it was quite uncomfortable because, you know, you didn't have fans or anything in it. But it was, you put up with it, you know, it wasn't bad, you know, for being in Korea, it was really pretty good. So, but we was getting our 3 squares, and after the truce and stuff, and then in October, it was October, our first sergeant, Sergeant Vale, he said, "Hey, Elmore," he said, "your number's up. Don't tell anybody I told you, but you're going home." And he'd seen it come in orders, I guess. And so in about 2 weeks, they sent me to Busan. I was on a boxcar, sat on a bench, and there was no, there was no other Americans there. That was quite an experience.
So did you leave after the truce?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, it was after the truce.
And how was it when the truce was signed and that news filtered? How was that for?
Oh boy, that was really. There were a lot of happy Americans, I tell you. It was quite a day. Yeah, it really was. I can remember that. It really was, yeah. And at that time, we was all alive, and we knew we was going to go home, or we thought we was. But after, here recently, there's been a lot of issues come up over there. So it's still a thorn in our side, a really bad one. So only time will tell, I guess.
So overall, thinking about the Korean War and that, do you have any thoughts on just in general of the whole situation?
Well, like I said, I was glad I could serve my country, but I don't know if it proved a point or what, but I can't say that if we won or what, but at the time, it felt like we won anyway, at the time. But now, like I said, it's still a thorn in our side over there, but we probably learned from it, I hope.
So you said your number came up, you were on a train and left, so where did you go from there?
To Busan.
To Busan, okay.
And then from there was a Sergeant Mueller boat. It wasn't very big. In fact, there wasn't a chair on it. There wasn't a place to sit down on that ship. And it took 24 hours to go from Busan to Osaka, and that's where I went. And then we left in a hurry, so a lot of our stuff was still stored in Japan. So we had to go pick up our own stuff. But they provided transportation and stuff for us on trains and stuff. There was a lot of good trains in Japan at that time. So but we spent a couple of days in Osaka, and then we motored up to Camp Shimofene. That's where we had been in Japan, and picked up our stuff, and then we were sent to Yokohama, and then we come home. It was on the ship 14 days, and that was in November, and it was pretty cold. We stopped in Alaska to pick up some sailors that was getting discharged, and it was really cold, like today. But I can say I was in Alaska for a brief time.
So then where did you go back to Washington?
Seattle.
Seattle, okay. And then from there, how did it play out?
Well, it was kind of interesting. When you get off the ship, you get to eat anything you want. I mean, that they got there. And I can still remember they had a great big old porterhouse steak there, and I picked that, and I got 2 quarts of milk, because I hadn't had any milk for I don't know how long, and 4 eggs, and I hadn't had any fresh eggs and that was my meal. Steak and them eggs and milk and bread. And then we'd already checked out bedding, and we were supposed to stay there all night. But all at once we got orders to turn in our bedding, and they put us on a train and sent us to Fort Sheridan.
Mm-hmm.
And we spent Thanksgiving in 1953 on a train, going through the Rockies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we got in Chicago the day after Thanksgiving in 1953.
And how did that feel being?
Oh boy, that's a pretty special feeling.
Yeah.
You kind of walk on clouds, or you're just darn glad to be home.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I can say. You're just darn glad to be back in America. But listen, we got a great country, and after you see some of them other places, you know how great our country is. And a lot of people, I don't know, they just take this country too much for granted, I think. And I don't think some people really appreciate what they do have, but that's another story.
Sure. So you're back in Chicago, and were you processed, and that was when you were discharged from the Army there, or did you serve a little?
No,
more?
I come home. I got a weekend pass, and I came home. I lived 100 and some miles from Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
in Mason City,
Mm-hmm.
which is 30 miles north of us. And I come home, and a guy that was on ship with was from Havana, Illinois, and so his wife, he got a hold of her somewhere, and she picked us up and she took me right to the front door of my house, and I got to see my family. That was pretty special.
Yeah.
Pretty special. Yep. Because I had a little girl that I'd never seen.
How old was she when you got home?
A little over a year.
Wow.
Yep. Now, she's had, well, I don't have to talk about that, I guess, but she had 4 kids.
Sure.
And I've got 3 great-great-grandchildren.
Wow.
And 6 great-grandchildren. And 4 grandchildren.
The legacy goes on.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you had to go back to Chicago
Yeah.
for a little while, and then
Yeah.
how much longer were you in?
Oh, I think just as long as it took to do the paperwork. I don't know that I was there. I know I stayed a couple of nights, but I really don't know how many days. And then, of course, they sent us back on the train. And my family picked me up this time at Lincoln. So, yeah, them was good times.
So now you're home, and you've been through this experience that may or may not been hard to talk about or to explain.
Yeah.
How did you switch gears and acclimate to being home?
Well, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. It's all together different living in a family home than it is in a barracks home, and it's different, and that's all. You just it takes a lot of time you got to get. It takes a while. I suppose it took me. I don't know how long it did take me, but I know I had some few problems where I'd get testy, things would go wrong. I imagine some of the people that are a little hyper, it probably shows up when they get home. It's probably harder for them to do, but when there's no stress, I don't know if you create stress to make it. I just can't answer that, but it is different.
Well, I think you mentioned earlier that you were a contractor after you returned. So, was that your own business, or did you work for somebody?
No, that was my own business.
Your own business. And how long did you?
Rest of my life.
Rest of your life?
Well, not the rest of my life. I retired in the year 2000. officially that was the year that I actually took it easy for a couple years before that, and just did what me and one guy could do, and just kind of coasted into retirement, I guess. I just kind of coasted into retirement.
Let's see. Are you a member of any? Did you become a member of any veterans organizations?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Which ones?
The Legion and the Veterans of Foreign War, VFW.
Okay. And have there been any reunions that you were able to attend? Like, I know you didn't go to Korea, but
I didn't go. I had a chance to go to Korea, and I just didn't go. And I just didn't want to go.
Sure. They didn't have any here in the States where.
No,
Just for the.
at that, like I said, I started my own business, and that pretty much takes 24 hours a day.
Sure.
And I didn't have time. But we finally did. I started taking vacations when I was 40 years old. And then from after that, we planned on taking vacations. And by the way, I've lost 2 wives.
Oh, sorry.
My first wife died in '96, and my second wife died in the year 2013. So I'm on my own now, and it's no fun.
Well, how would you say that the experiences you had while you were in the service affected the rest of your life?
Well, you always think about the time he was in service. I'd say it affected it quite a bit. Just being a Legion member and helping people, you kind of help people, and being in the parades every year and stuff. Yeah, it changed my life quite a bit. And I think it probably changed my thinking too. By the experiences that I had. I don't think you take things for granted as much. I don't know. Like I always said, I was glad I was able to serve my country, but I also said I was damn glad to be home.
Were there any life lessons that you can recall that you've carried on into your life after the military that you learned while you were in?
Well, my best friend was killed in a flame out, jet flame out. He was 23 years old, and I've never forgot that day. And he missed his whole life, his kids and everything. And I always it's always been in my mind about him, because he was a hell of a nice guy and one of the smartest people I ever knew. And to have his life just end like that, I just, a freak accident. He's buried in Arlington Cemetery.
Well, are there any last comments that you would like to share? Anything that you might say, like even to this generation or the next generation?
Well, thank God you're American. That's what I say that about every day. Thank God I'm an American. That's about all I can leave to our generation. And you can't ever forget about our country. By the way, I was on the honor flight too. And any veteran should go on that if he gets a chance.
Yes.
It's an honor to go. And I know any veteran that hasn't been there would enjoy it.
Yeah. Very good. Well, I want to thank you very much for agreeing to be interviewed, and thank you very much for your service to our country.
Well, like I say, I'm glad I'm an American.